This is the story about the town and mines of Nordegg. This is an old coal town which is located in the foothills on the eastern slopes of the Rocky Mountains, up in Alberta, Canada. It was back in 1907 that Martin Cohn, along with a geologist friend, Donaldson Dowling, were out prospecting on the eastern side of the Rocky Mountains in Alberta, Canada, when they discovered rich coal seams and then proceeded to stake a bunch of claims. Martin, who was of German descent, took samples of this coal back to Germany in hopes of being able to raise funds to start a mine. Before any decisions were made about investing in this coal discovery, investors in Germany wanted these coal samples examined by a professor in Berlin. This professor, however, said that this was impossible. According to the professor, the Rocky Mountains were Cretaceous and therefore could not possibly contain coal, and proceeded to call Martin a liar and a fraud. The investors thought the best way to find out the truth was to send the professor over to Canada and see these coal fields for himself. It was at this time that the professor was proven wrong and had to concede that there was in fact coal in the Rocky Mountains, and 2 years later, in 1909, the Brazeau Collieries was established. Also in 1909, Martin Cohn legally changed his last name to Nordegg, which in German means North Corner. Back at that time, there was nothing out here but forest land, and the only way into this rugged area was on foot or horseback. It was at this time that Martin convinced the Canadian Northern Railway to build a rail line into the area. In 1911, a small camp was built for workers, and the following year the mines were working and stockpiling coal. Then, in 1914, the rail line reached the site of the mine camp, and coal was being loaded onto train cars headed for Rocky Mountain House, which was the closest town to these coal fields. In 1914, the construction of the town of Nordegg began, and people started to move into the area. This was a company-owned town, and by 1923 there were over 2,500 people living here, with about 800 of whom were miners. Also that same year, it is said that mine production hit 500,000 tons of coal being mined. These coal fields were known to have 5 different seams of coal, but only the number 2 and number 3 coal seams were mined. This was because these coal seams were the thickest, with the number 2 seam being around 8 feet thick and the number 3 coal seam about 15 feet. There was over 100 feet of rock between these 2 layers of coal. At first, the coal mined here was used for steam locomotives, but as diesel fuel became more in use, the coal was turned into briquettes for home heating and other industrial uses, and by 1937 there was a total of 5 briquette plants running. Then, on October 31, 1941, disaster struck. There was a major explosion in the number 3 mine which killed 29 miners. 6 weeks later, the mine started back up, and by the following year, the mines at Nordegg were the top coal-producing mines in Alberta. Then in 1946, surface mining started to take place in areas where the coal was closer to surface. Then, like so many old mine camps we read about, a fire started in one of the briquette plants and burned all 5 plants down, as well as the tipple. Construction started right away on building a new tipple and new briquette plants, but this time everything was constructed of metal. However, this new construction would spell the end of the mining activity here. With more industry switching to natural gas and petrol fuels, the demand for coal took a hit, and a huge loan that was taken out for construction was getting into arrears, and by 1955 the mines were shut down and pretty much everyone left town. Over the years, it is estimated that over 9.5 million tons of coal was mined in this coal field. They say that what has been mined here is just a drop in the bucket, as there is untold amount of coal still buried under the surface here. You can still go out to the town of Nordegg today. Most of the old buildings are gone. There is a museum, and you can go for a guided mine tour also. There are countless old roads and trails for people to go out on quads, bikes, and sleds. There is also new development of new high-end homes being built where the old town once stood. There is also a golf course and lots of campgrounds nearby. I hope you enjoyed this short story about the coal mines of Nordegg. Please like, share, and subscribe so we can continue to bring you more old lost mine stories.